All right, well, let's get started. Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Hope you're having a good day. We're looking forward to spending an hour and a half with you to share the latest updates from the Commission on support for candidates and programs given the COVID-19 situation. So with that, we're going to get started. So the title of today's webinar is the CalTPA Program Coordinator Update Webinar, and today is April 28th, and it is 2020. So again, welcome to the webinar.
So this is a picture. I have two kids, and if you have seen this, this is definitely something that they love to do. So we just thought we would start with a cute little picture of what to do during a classroom Zoom meeting according to the kids. And my kids have done, I think, almost everything except for the last one, which is pick your nose, but everything else they've done, showing off their cats, taking over the computer to go all around the house. So we just thought that we would start with something cute to give our webinar some levity as we get into the information.
Thank you, James, for sharing that. Let's move on. Now that we've had our laugh, to the next slide. We want to start by saying welcome and introducing ourselves. My name is Amy Rising. I'm the Director of Performance Assessment Policy and Development for the Commission on Teacher Credentialing. And I'll turn it over to Wayne to say hello.
Yeah, Wayne Baser here at the Commission. Thank you all. And just to let you know, through the rest of the presentation, there will be no more laughing.
Well, it's Tuesday, though. I think we could laugh a little.
Okay.
And James?
Hi, I'm James Webb. Good afternoon. Thank you for being with us today. I am a consultant with the Performance Assessment Development and work with the team with Wayne, Gay, and Amy.
And Gay Roby is with us today.
Hi all, and welcome to the webinar. I must say my son, who is 30 years old, said that he had 5 of those things done at his last Zoom meeting at the office.
Well, so kids and adults alike are all being silly. All right, and our technical contractor is with us today as well from Evaluation Systems. I'll turn it over to Mary to introduce her team.
Oh, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining the CalTPA Program Update webinar today. I'm Mary Autry, the Senior Area Director with Evaluation Systems. And I guess when I'm not working from home, I am in the Sacramento office. But also joining from our team today is Tina Freshour, Program Manager, Charlotte Walker, Test Development Manager, and Lori Thornley, Program Manager. Thanks, Amy.
We have one other guest with us. We believe she's joining. She's been working with us a great deal over the last several weeks to help us all really dig in and understand what online learning could and should be looking like. Her name is Laura Kassab. She's a lead assessor with us on CalTPA and also faculty at San Jose State University. So hi to Laura. Laura, are you with us?
I am. Hello, everyone.
Yay. Hi, Laura. Thank you for joining us. You have a few slides right at the end of the slide deck, just to give you a heads up. We'll let you know.
Okay.
Right, let's go on to the next slide.
So as you know, we always take a few minutes at the beginning of our presentations just to go over norms for a minute. So just make sure you use your mute button to prevent background noise. If you have questions and comments throughout the presentation, please use the chat feature to post your questions. Keep questions sort of a general focus rather than program specific. Avoid multitasking. Make sure if you have phones and other things, put those all on mute. And please honor the time for the participants and the presenters. So use of chat for questions. Once again, as I said, please use the chat for that. The commission staff and ES will periodically pause and we'll answer some questions for you folks. And then the webinar will be recorded and archived on the CTC's YouTube channel.
Great, thanks, Wayne. This is our agenda. We're going to cover these points with you in the next hour and a half. So we're going to start with just the highest level general COVID-19 guidance documents that the Commission has published on its website. And that website is www.ctc.ca.gov. You want to bookmark this website if you haven't already done so, because this is where you're going to find all of the up-to-date guidance as we move through this challenging time. Things are changing quickly, and as things change, the Commission takes immediate responsive action and updates its guidance. We'll then go on and look at the teacher performance assessment guidance and FAQs that have been developed and posted to make sure that we're all able to understand what these really highest level questions, what the answers are to those questions. We'll move on and look at the Commission action. Just last week on April 23rd and 24th, the Commission had an online meeting and addressed many issues of flexibility that were within the Commission's purview to address. And we want to make sure that you all are aware of the action that was taken. This Commission item, the two Commission items that we will discuss today, can be found at that CTC website. Then we'll move on and we'll take a look at our scoring update. We have been, of course, moving through this year with all of you programs and candidates and all of our assessors and our lead assessors, and we have some update data that we would like to share with you at this time. From there, we'll go on and look particularly at the CalTPA and the guidance we're providing around cycle 1 and around cycle 2. And then we'll wrap up our time together today by talking about upcoming events, contact information, and available supports and where you can find them. We do have 152 people online with us today, so welcome to all of you. And again, just in case you've just joined us, know that this webinar is being recorded and the slide deck will be archived and available to you in the future. So we're going to start with our general CTC COVID-19 guidance. So we just want to remind you again that all of the guidance is posted on the Commission website. We also try and alert you to anything new that has developed in our weekly PSD news, which comes out each Friday, typically in the afternoon. And here is the website for you to subscribe to this. If you haven't already, we highly recommend that you subscribe to this weekly newsletter that's put out by the Professional Services Division. And we have a whole section on performance assessment work each Friday in this newsletter. Finally, in case you haven't been with us lately, this may be new information for you, so we want you to take note of number 3. We have accessed our CTC YouTube channel. We've had one for a while, and this is where you find all the recorded Commission meetings and COA meetings. But now you're going to find a couple new channels, one for CalTPA, one for CalAPA, and this is the web address that you can go to find all of these posted webinars that we've been hosting. We've also been hosting a whole series of how to teach online webinars. These are also posted at this address. Turn it over to you, James.
So candidate questions that we have. In order to assist your candidates with a timely response, what we recommend is that you please share the Commission's COVID-19 guidance and resources with candidates. In addition, please share your own program's internal COVID-19 communication with candidates. And very important that you instruct your candidates to contact you first, their program coordinator and/or faculty for questions pertaining to the impacts of COVID-19 on completion of their program requirements. It's very important that when candidates reach out to you, that you are the first line in their communication before sending any questions up the ladder to the Commission, because many of the questions that can be answered can be found on the CTC's COVID-19 which is that green bar that you'll find at the top of the commission's main page. When a candidate or anyone else accesses the commission's main page, you'll see a green bar that has specific guidance with regard to COVID-19. So we wanted to make sure that folks were aware that this is the best protocol in order to help candidates with their questions. Program coordinator questions. These are the email address mailboxes where you can address questions. If they are general or COVID-19 related CalTPA policy questions, they can go to the CalTPA email box. If they are technical administration questions, these would be questions that would go to evaluation systems, and that email address is listed second. Technical submission questions can be found at the website, the CTC exams website that's listed here. And any CalTPA program questions can go to the CalTPA web address box that is listed here. As a reminder, in terms of general guidance, the Commission is closely monitoring the status of the coronavirus and its impact on school and university closures on candidates enrolled in educator preparation programs. The CTC is also particularly concerned about candidates' ability to complete their educator preparation programs during this academic year, and the CTC is looking for ways to mitigate this situation with regulations and with policies that they have within their purview and what they have access to in order to be able to help work through.
Mm-hmm. So we just want to pause for a moment and walk you through this information. So passage of the Commission-approved teaching performance assessment is a requirement for licensure in California. The Commission, in and of itself, as an acting body, is not able to waive this requirement.
Well, I know.
As a professional standards board and licensing agency, the Commission is not, as a professional standards board and licensing agency, the Commission is responsible for ensuring candidates have demonstrated competence prior to earning a license, and consistent with practice in other professions, maintaining the standards for the profession remains a very high priority for the Commission.
Amy, I'm bringing it back up. I am sorry.
That's okay.
Technical issues.
We're good. We'll just pause for a second. So again, we just want to point out, while the Commission has purview over its standards, other exams and assessments are in Ed Code and regulation, and the Commission itself cannot waive those expectations for licensure. We do want to point out, though, as we move forward during this time and we see our educational settings shift from in-person to online learning, that the Commission and Evaluation Systems is working with its assessors to strengthen the preparation of the assessors to be able to evaluate the responses that include evidence collected through synchronous online learning settings. So I'm on slide 13. And finally, synchronous online learning settings are allowed in both cycles of the CalTPA. And Wayne, I'll turn it over to you.
Wayne, I believe you're on mute.
So a couple of scenarios I wanted to run past you. First of all, candidates that are able to finish coursework, clinical practice, and the CalTPA by the end of the spring or summer 2020 term. So course-embedded demonstrations of teaching performance expectations, the TPEs, are under purview of the educational preparation programs, and they will have to modify, they have the flexibility to modify and adapt as they see fit. Guidance principle for making modifications for clinical practice should be whether candidates can demonstrate to their programs that they have developed the key TPE skills and knowledge to draw upon when they begin teaching in the fall. So continuing on with that. Also in that first scenario, programs, you're also going to be asked to provide a summary, no more than 5 pages, on how you have modified coursework and program level assessments due to COVID-19. But there's really no need for programs to update their course matrix to identify how these modifications were made during this time period, which takes us to scenario 2. James.
So in scenario 2, sorry, I was muted. In scenario 2, we have candidates who are able to finish coursework but are unable to complete clinical practice, the CalTPA and/or RECA by September the 1st of 2020. Programs with candidates in this situation can modify coursework in clinical practice as outlined in scenario 1 that we looked at earlier. In addition, the program may submit a written request to the commission that their candidates be eligible for a program sponsor variable term waiver, also known as a PS-VTW, based on the emergency health and safety restrictions arising from COVID-19. The June commission meeting provides the next opportunity. The April commission meeting has closed, and commission took action on what was presented in April, but the next time will be in June. The process for requesting the PS-VTW is available on the Commission's COVID-19 webpage, and the form for this will be available on June the 1st. Important to know that this PS-VTW form will be a paper application and will not be an online application. So in looking at our Q&A, Amy, I believe there was some questions that came up. Is there a specific document template that programs will use to submit the 5-page report?
And I will call on Gay. Roby, are you aware of a specific template at this time?
I am not, but I also know that Terry Clark is on one of our participant lists, so she may wish to unmute herself and say yay or nay.
There is no specific document at this time. If there's a need for it, we will work to develop something.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you, Terry, and welcome to the webinar. Other questions, James?
Yes, can the synchronous sessions have only one student at a time?
Great question. We're going to cover this as we get more specifically into each cycle and the requirements. Remember, we're following the assessment guide as written, and we will speak to this a little bit as we move through the slide set. So stay tuned for that.
Another question is, do candidates complete the variable term waiver on June the 1st?
So the variable term waiver, the program sponsor variable term waiver, very important to understand, this is a waiver that is going to be called the PS-VTW, is something that is filled out and submitted by the program with the candidate. So it's a paper application. Those of you who are involved in credential applications know that there are questions the candidate must answer to, there are attestations they must make. So it is a collaborative effort between the program and the candidate, but the program actually submits it, and they must submit it for each candidate. We're going to get into VTW issues in a little bit, so we'll hold some of those questions until we get to that section. If you could, as we move along, keep your questions keyed and tied to the information we're dealing with, that will help us move efficiently through the presentation, and we'll make sure we don't miss any questions. So right now we're talking about the highest level guidance, where to find guidance, and the initial documentation that's been posted for the commission.
Correct. And so the questions that I'm seeing really apply more about looking at applying for the variable term waiver. So I believe you said, Amy, we're going to get into that a little bit later.
We are going to get into that later, and there will be also additional webinars coming up that we're going to tell you about that will be presented later this week and early next week that very specifically will provide information about the variable term waiver process. There will also be a PSA coming out very soon from the commission that will speak directly to what programs need to do, what candidates need to do, what induction programs need to do, and what employers need to do. So we will be providing information for you today, but know that there will be additional information coming to you. Let's go ahead and move on.
Sure.
And we will keep tracking questions, but we'll go ahead and move on and see if we don't answer some of those questions that you all have provided as we go. So what we want to do is start with what happened last week. So last week we had our first online commission meeting. It went really well. It was a Zoom meeting. We had over 500 people participate in the meeting, and the commission was able to take into account and make adoptions on many issues of flexibility. So we want to go over a few of these issues with you and let you know that you are welcome to see the full item as presented at the commission website. You can go to the website and get to both of these items, but let's go ahead to the next slide. So there were two particular items that will be of interest to you. The first one was 3A action, was an action item brought forward in the appeals and waivers conversation. And the title was Consideration of Actions to Assist Applicants, Educators, and Credential Candidates Impacted by Emergency Health and Safety Conditions Related to COVID-19. The second item that we'll deal with in this presentation was 4A, brought forth in the Educator Preparation Committee, and it looked at the flexibility for commission-approved educator preparation programs due to the COVID-19 crisis. Next slide. In 3A, staff recommended the following. They recommended that the commission authorize the deferral of the basic skills requirement for COVID-19 candidates. They recommended that the commission identify hardships related to COVID-19 candidates as good cause for extensions. The item addressed authorizing renewals of clear credentials, authorizing the issuance of variable term waivers for credential candidates, and in addition to authorize the options for commission-approved institutions to submit one-time requests of such waivers when candidates have shown continued progress towards completion of the preparation program. Next slide. The commission took action and approved all 4 recommendations in item 3A and approved the option for programs to submit one-time requests for reissuance of the PS-VTW for candidates who had shown continued progress. For the full item and to see the explicit detailed information, we ask you to go to the commission website for the full agenda item. But do know that all recommendations that were put forth in agenda item 3A, they were all adopted by the commission last week. That brings us to commission agenda item 4A. And there were quite a number of recommendations brought forward here. So we're going to take you through the ones that are pertinent to you as multiple subject, single subject programs. So the first section of this item, and it's so great that Terry Clark is on the line with us today because she presented this item and will be able to address questions if they come up. But the first issue that was dealt with under the preliminary multiple and single subject credential requirements was the issue of 600 hours of clinical practice. And 2 options were provided for the commission to consider. The first was reduce the number of hours required, that the program could make the determination as to when a candidate has completed sufficient clinical practice, and that hours completed will be noted on the individual development plan for the candidate, so that as the candidate came forward into induction, it would be clear what kind of support the candidate needed. In the item, there was an or mention and a B option, which is this, that the candidate completed the minimal number of clinical hours as set by the commission and passed the TPA. And if they passed their TPA and completed minimal number of hours, then the program could deem these candidates to have met the required clinical practice hours. The outcome of this in the meeting was that these two items were combined and that either or was going to be acceptable. So let's go on to the next slide. Again, for the multiple subject and single subject credential requirements, additional issues that came up, number of formal observations. So the recommendation was to eliminate or modify number of formal observations and delegate the responsibility for sufficient supervision to the program. Solo teaching, another requirement. The recommendation was to suspend the 4-week requirement and rely on program to ensure that candidates have had sufficient opportunities to independently work with their students. There are quite a number of recommendations. We're going to walk through them and then we'll tell you how it turned out. The next section was specific to education specialist credential requirements. And here the recommendation was to suspend requirements and rely on programs to ensure that each candidate had sufficiently broad experiences with students and that this level of experience that had been accomplished would be noted on the individual development plan for the ed specialist candidate. Recommendation F, next slide. This was about preliminary teacher preparation preconditions requiring candidates to meet the subject matter requirement. And in this recommendation under F, the recommendation was to waive precondition 6 for general ed and precondition 3 for special ed for individuals enrolling in a CTC approved teacher preparation program for the 2021 year. Next slide. The item moved on and addressed teacher and administrator induction issues. Recommendation number, letter G, affirmed that the 2019-20 year of participation in induction was in fact a full year, and that this recommendation would include candidates in the first year of induction, candidates in the second year of induction, and early completion option, ECO, early completion option candidates. Recommendation H spoke to suspending preconditions that required a candidate to hold a preliminary credential to enter induction, and that candidates on a PS-VTW could enter and begin induction while they continue to work to complete their preliminary requirements. Next slide. The agenda, we wanted to be clear with you about what could not be addressed by the commission, what the commission cannot modify. So the commission cannot change expectations and requirements around examinations for CBEST, CSET, RECA, the TPA, and the APA. Also in Ed Code and Title V regs, candidates have to hold a certificate of clearance prior to interacting with students. The number of clinical practice hours for pupil personnel services programs can also not be modified by the commission. The number of hours of support and supervision required to be provided for teaching interns cannot be modified, and the ECO or early completion option for multiple subject and single subject intern candidates, as well as for teacher induction candidates, cannot be modified by the commission acting on its own. These modifications, were they to happen, would have to come from an executive order from the administration / governor's office. Next slide. So to wrap up, commission agenda item 4A that had quite a number of recommendations in it. The commission did approve all recommendations in item 4A with the small adjustment of combining A and B together. And again, for all the details that are provided for you, we recommend that you go to the website for the full agenda item if you didn't have the chance to take a look at it yet. Also, the recording of the commission meeting will be available if you would like to listen to the discussion that happened at the end of each of these two items. But we do want to assure you that all of the flexibility and recommendations that the commission staff made to the commissioners, it was all approved at the meeting last Thursday. And Terry, you're on the line. Would you like to add anything? Or
no, I think you did. I think you did a really good summary there, Amy.
Okay, great. Well, we know Terry's with us on the line, so if there are specific questions, we'll access her expertise. All right, let's keep going. And this brings us to some Q&A. So again, Gay, I think you were going to go through and manage our Q&A with us, and others, if you want to let us know, Gay, what questions we might address at this time.
Sure, there is one from Danielle Centeno. It says, does the candidate still have the option to postpone induction program entry until after clearing the program sponsored variable term waiver requirements?
So that's a really interesting question. And my response to that would, and I'm going to get Terry to chime in, or Gay, maybe you know this answer. We know that when candidates come into employment, they have options. Our strong recommendation is that candidates begin their induction programs upon employment, because induction programs provide support. And especially during this time when a candidate leaves a program and perhaps has not finished all of their preliminary requirements, and they are potentially on a PS-VTW and they're coming into induction, that is where they're going to get support. So they are going to have some support from their program because they are not finished yet with their preliminary credential, but they are also going to receive support from their induction coaches and mentors and the program. And so I think we would recommend ever more than we have in the past that they really get involved with an induction program upon employment. But Gay, I'll turn it to you, and then if Terry wants to weigh in.
That has always been the choice of the candidate. The programs were required to have the program set up in such a way that they offered induction too, but that, you know, bring a horse to water, you can't make him drink. But with the variable term waiver, perhaps Terry would want to say, that's a term of employment, because it says on our responsibility list we're working on that the induction program is making sure that the candidate has a support in order to get the rest of the requirements done from the preliminary program.
Yes, this is Terry. I would even say it's more important that they enroll in induction. And we're providing guidance to the induction programs that their induction activity is to work on their TPA. They're not doing other inquiry cycles. They have a mentor who's there for daily support, and that mentor will be a sounding board and an assistance while they finish their performance assessment requirements.
Great, thank you, Terry. I think that's right. Just if ever there was an important time to make sure that candidates had access to a highly effective induction program, it would be now, particularly if they have requirements that they need to keep working on. So thank you for chiming in there, Terry. We really appreciate that. And we do know that there will be more information, particularly targeted to the induction community of learners as we go forward in the next several days here ahead of us. So let's, are there any other questions at this time, Gay, that you think we should address?
Michelle Williams George asked, did I see that candidates do not need to complete the subject matter waiver for the 2021 school year?
I would highly recommend that you go back to the item. That's not my understanding. And again, Terry, you are on line.
Yes, the clarification is for new candidates next fall, they don't have to complete the subject matter requirement to be eligible to start student teaching. It only has to do with when they can begin their daily whole class instruction. They can start it without meeting subject matter.
Great. All right, thank you for that clarification. And again, Because this webinar is really focused on CalTPA specific guidance, we didn't go through all the specificity of those two items. I highly recommend to each of you that you read the items and look at the adoptions and know that a PSA is coming out to clarify what action the commission took. That should be out within a day or two. So watch for that communication. We'll make sure that we send it to all program coordinators when it is available. Okay, let's take one more question and then we'll move on.
We actually have a couple of RECA CSET questions and intern questions that I know we're going to get to later on, as well as another variable term waiver question. So I think you're okay to go on, and then they can re-ask at the other end if we don't address them.
All right, thank you, Gay. All right, so let's continue. And now we're going to dig in a little bit here to the PS-VTW. Remember, that stands for Program Sponsor Variable Term Waiver. James?
Yes, thank you, Amy. And what we're going to do first is look at the details with regard to the PS variable term waiver. Educator preparation programs will submit the necessary waiver application and required documentation for each of their candidates who need this document to the commission for processing. The waiver form will be available June the 1st of this year, 2020. Once the program sponsor variable term waiver is issued, it will give the candidate 1 year of additional time to complete the remaining credential requirements, while also authorizing the individual to teach or provide the services associated with their respective credential.
Next slide, James.
Moving forward, the PS-VTW related to COVID-19 is most appropriate for the following credential areas, and they are listed here. So the ones on the left: preliminary, multiple, and single subject, preliminary ed specialist, preliminary admin services, continuing forward, and then any other program that has clinical practice requirements that cannot be met due to COVID-19.
Great. And in the next slide, James.
The PS-VTW related to COVID-19 is not needed for institutions sponsoring induction programs for teachers or administrators. They do not need to apply for a PS-VTW at this time, and any institution that sponsors an intern program and are able to request a 1-year extension, but they do not need to rely on the PS-VTW process.
And what criteria do we need, James?
The criteria is that the programs must submit a waiver request for all candidates who have been impacted by COVID-19 public health crisis and who were, as the following pieces are here, making appropriate progress towards completion of their program requirements. Please highlight, underline that idea, making appropriate progress. They were on track to complete their preparation program by September 1st, 2020, and they were not able to complete one or more of the following that will be verified in writing by the commission-approved program upon application. They were not able to complete their clinical practice hours required for program completion, the coursework required for program completion, examinations required for program completion, or a performance assessment required for program completion. Subsequent criteria also include, because the current public health crisis is evolving on a weekly basis, it is impossible to predict whether the candidates eligible for COVID-19 PS-VTW would be able to complete all program requirements within the 1-year term of a waiver. And in the event that such hardship continue to be ongoing beyond the 1-year term, the Commission could allow the reissuance of the PS-VTW as outlined in CCR section 80124, and with verification from the program that the candidate made sufficient progress towards completion of the program during the 1-year term of the initial waiver.
Great. And that brings us to questions. and answers, particularly about the PS-VTW. So again, Gay, you want to help us with those questions, a few of those as we go on? Gay, you might be on mute.
I'm sorry, I am on mute.
It's
Going
okay.
back up to the top of those, when will they get the PS-VTW form? And you said it would be a June the 1st when it would be available. And then a
Correct.
follow-up to that was if they're not seeing candidates face-to-face, how is that going to work? And several people in the comments suggested that it could be handled electronically with various PDFs and back and forth, online waivers, those kinds of things. Moving down. I know we had a ton of them. Now they're all hiding. If a candidate or PS completes the VTW paper application, will they have it approved soon enough to be able to apply for fall teaching positions on EdJoin?
So on the EdJoin process, it can be extremely helpful to candidates who are looking for employment. And we know that they need in the EdJoin platform to upload their document. So since so many of our candidates don't have a document yet, if they are applying right now, one strategy that we have heard about is that the program writes a letter of support for the candidate saying that they are in good standing and that they have completed all that they can possibly complete. And perhaps they even mention how they will continue to be supported as they move forward. There will be always options for candidates as we come through this into the fall. And those options, many are available now, and additional options are being discussed by the commission with the administration. So if candidates need to apply right this minute, that is one option that we've heard that has been pursued by programs as candidates use EdJoin to apply that don't yet have a document. Really, they will need to wait in some cases, but we also know, and maybe James or Gay again, either one of you would want to weigh in here about that process, that on the ground process candidates explore and go through as they're working towards employment.
Can the PS-VTW be used for those who completed the program in December of 2019, but were unable to pass the TPA or the RECA?
Barry Clark, are you on the, you're still with us. Is there a particular start time? Wasn't it March 13th? Do we set a start time for any of these adoptions that the commission made?
We did, in that March 19th was the day the governor did the executive order. If a program believes that the candidate is scheduled to complete between March 19th and September 1st, the VTW is appropriate. So that is a local program decision. Is this candidate completing between those dates?
Great, thank you so much, Terry. Let's take a few more questions, Gay, and then we'll move on because again, we have a lot of information coming and we may answer your questions as we go.
Okay, Amy, what are the pros and the cons for an intern? Should they request a one-year intern extension or should they look to go to the variable term waiver?
So this webinar is not about interns, it's about the CalTPA guidance. So maybe you know the answer to that question, Gay, or Terry, you would like to come on and answer that intern question real quick?
There is going to be another webinar next Monday morning, 10:30 to noon, and we'll talk about this there also. The purpose of the VTW is it lets someone be employed. An intern is able to be employed. So if an intern is staying in the same district, working for the same employer, the extension makes a lot of sense. If the intern is not staying in the same district, then the document is no longer good, and that intern would need a VTW to be able to get employment in a different district.
Great, thank you. And again, as Terry pointed out, there will be specific intern guidance being posted on the commission website, and intern particular guidance will be offered in the PSD webinars that are coming up later this week and early next week. And of course, you can always reach any of us 24/7 because this is what we do. All right, let's keep going. I know lots of questions are coming in, but we will answer, I think, a lot of questions as we move forward in the PowerPoint. So here we are at this point with our frequently asked questions. I'm going to turn it over to Wayne Baser. Wayne?
Okay, some of the questions that have come up. So first of all, will candidates still be required to complete a TPA? And the answer to that is yes. So completion of any TPA is required by law, ed code, and it's a section number there for all multiple subject and single subject teacher candidates before they can be recommended for a preliminary credential. Okay, next question. So question 2, what is the program's responsibility to candidates who are completing their TPA while employed on a variable term waiver? Well, candidates must be affiliated with a commission-approved program to be eligible to complete an approved TPA. If a candidate is issued a PS-VTW by the commission and develops their TPA during this time, the program is expected to support the candidate consistent with the preliminary multiple and single subject program standard 5. And in addition to that, program level support may be provided through distance learning, as candidates may not be employed near the preliminary teacher preparation program. There may be an appropriate role for on-site support to the candidate provided by the mentor coach that they are assigned to during induction. More details about supporting the candidate on a PS-VTW while they complete a TPA will be forthcoming. Which brings us to question 3. Due to school closures, can candidates change teaching venues or complete their TPA requirements in an online setting? And yes, determinations regarding the appropriate site for a candidate's clinical practice must be made by their program and should take into consideration school closures, student accessibility, and cycle requirements. A candidate must continue to receive appropriate support from their program for their clinical practice.
Was it in a cute basket or something?
So if you're online with us, please mute. Please mute your phones and your computers. Thank you.
Or James, you can mute them also, please. Thank you. Okay, moving on to question 4.
Yep.
What are the Commission's expectations for online teaching used to complete the TPA requirements? Well, CalTPA submissions must meet the requirements specified in the respective TPA assessment guides. So programs must work with candidates to determine whether an online setting is suitable for them completing their assignment. A key issue will be whether the teacher candidate can obtain sufficient video evidence to support development of their TPA. The second key issue will be that the candidate can be adequately supported and supervised by the program as they develop their TPA. And we'll pass the next question over to you, Amy.
Yep, so question 5. Due to disruptions, will additional dates for submission of materials be added for the CalTPA? So the commission staff has worked with evaluation systems to add additional submission deadlines. These deadlines are now posted at the ctcexams.nes Inc. website. If we move through the spring and realize that we need additional dates, then we will continue to work with our contractor to make sure that we are providing support to candidates and additional dates if we need them. All dates will be posted on the assessment website as they are identified. Question 6, will there be significant delays in scoring TPA assessments? At this time, candidates can expect a 3-week processing time for score reports for CalTPA and EdTPA. ES is also the technical contractor for the EdTPA assessment model. And in both of our systems, we are not having to extend any of these processing time requirements. So all published spring submission dates are available, as we said, and all current and additional dates will be available. So right now, candidates will be getting score reports back within 3 weeks, and we expect to be able to do that as we move through the spring into the summer and into next year. Question number 7. How long do candidates have to complete their TPA submissions? Currently, candidates have 1 year for the CalTPA and 18 months for EdTPA. However, through working with our contractor, the contractor was able on April 6th, several weeks ago, to extend registration for all candidates, whether they're engaged with the CalTPA assessment model or the EdTPA assessment model. And registrations are now set to expire on December 5th of 2021. It has all been done and handled and taken care of. So there's nothing you need to do and nothing the candidate needs to do. Their registration has been extended until December 5th of 2021. Again, if you go to the website, you can see more information there. And question 8, can candidates withdraw if they believe they will be unable to complete their response before the deadline? Yes, candidates can always withdraw. Candidates who registered for any TPA but have not yet submitted can withdraw the registration and receive a full refund if their request is submitted within 1 year of the candidate's registration date. So information about withdrawals and re-registration can be found on the CalTPA, California Educator Credentialing Assessment website. That's that www.ctcexams.nesinc.com website. And right now, remember, it has been extended, so hopefully they won't need to withdraw. But if something critical has happened in the candidate's life and they do not see themselves finishing, they certainly can withdraw the registration and receive a full refund. And I'll turn it over to James.
Thank you, Amy. So here's a new frequently asked question. Do TPA permission slips collected for traditional classroom settings translate to online virtual learning environments? Each school district and/or school administrator determines what is acceptable under their student media waiver permission forms. Candidates should ask their district or school administrator if the permission form covers instruction conducted through virtual settings or only covers instruction in a traditional face-to-face setting. So it's important that candidates seek out and get that clarification so that they can have an understanding if the permission slips that they already collected does translate into that online virtual learning environment. Another new one for teacher candidates who are not employed in a teaching position in the fall, how might they complete a TPA? So if candidates are not employed in the fall, they will continue to stay enrolled in their teacher preparation programs and complete their TPA in student teaching placements under the supervision of the program. Do candidates need to be enrolled in a program to complete their TPA? In order for them to receive support, they need to be affiliated with their teacher preparation program. It is up to each program to determine how support and guidance will be provided to the candidate and if additional cost is warranted. If candidates are registered now for a TPA but choose to complete in the fall, will they be using this year's materials or will they need to use the new updated materials? If a teacher candidate is not able to complete a TPA this spring, then they will use the materials released in July of 2020 for the fall-winter completion of the TPA. Edits to the materials are minor and only considered to be improvements in clarity of the directions for the candidates.
All right, and again, we'll pause and take a few questions. Okay, are there a couple of questions that caught your eye?
Yes, I have a few here for you. Starting with Mick, he asked if a student attempts the TPA using the online version and fails, can they still be applying for the waiver?
Can you read that question again, Gay? I'm sorry.
If a student attempts a TPA online version and fails, can they still apply for a waiver?
So they're in your program, they've made progress, however, they have not passed the cycle. Yes, they would be able to be on a variable term waiver.
Okay, from Mark, did all programs who applied for the VTW by the April deadline receive approval?
Yes, and I apologize for not mentioning that. That was another big part of the commission adoption process. They did approve all programs that were submitted in the item, and the programs that were submitted in the in-folder item for being able to work with candidates to fill out that paper PS-VTW application form.
Okay, from Tammy, many university representatives who spoke at the 423 CTC meeting requested that the CTC request the governor to exempt the CalTPA requirement due to COVID-19 disruptions. What is the CTC's response to these requests?
The CTC is working with the administration to support candidates and to keep standards for effective teaching in place. Next question.
From Norma, if a candidate registered in one grade level and this changes with a new teaching assignment come the fall, is there a way they can change this on the website?
So they're moving from multiple subject to single subject?
Just says one grade level.
Well,
So,
if they're all a multiple subject candidate, then they wouldn't need to change anything. If they move from multiple subject, single subject, get in touch with us after this webinar. We can talk about that.
and then Irene seeking clarity, candidates that completed the program prior to March 13th, which would be the end of their fall 19 semester, and they are still struggling to pass the CalTPA, there will be no waiver for them, or do they qualify?
I think this is the same question we already answered, which Terry Clark said. It is the program's decision to determine if the candidate is making enough progress, even if they fail the cycle, that they could, and they still are making progress through the spring, but are not finished with the requirements, and they would be able to apply for the PS-VTW on behalf of that candidate.
Okay, two more. This is a quickie. Is it acceptable to complete instruction in a district-sponsored preschool program if the candidate has been involved in that classroom to date?
I can't think why not.
I agree.
Okay.
And then finally, Pamela, if the candidate withdraws after using a voucher, will the campus receive a replacement voucher code?
So that is a great evaluation systems question. And Tina, so
And
program has bought a voucher, or Lori Thornley, they've bought a voucher, the candidate needs it back.
Yes, I just got off of mute, but I was also typing the response. Just contact us at escaltpa@pearson.com and we will issue a replacement voucher or vouchers.
Great.
Lori, anything you want to add?
Nope, not at this time.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, thank you. All right. Anything else, Gay, at this time, or shall we move on?
Go ahead and move on, and I'll save a few. Tina's
Okay.
answering one online.
Yeah. So Amy, can I ask just one clarification question on the preschool
Go ahead, Laura.
CalTPA question?
Sure.
And that is, if they are completing it in the preschool, do they still need to address the California State Standards K6?
So I believe we've had questions about TK pre-K settings, and I believe there are specific standards for this work. So Wayne, I know you worked on this. Mary Autry, you're on the line. Either one of you have a specific answer, or should we just recommend this person get back in touch with us?
Well, from what I remember is that they still need to follow California standards, but they're looking at the K standards. So that's what I remember just off the top.
Yep, that's correct, Amy. They should follow the California content standards for kindergarten. TK doesn't have separate standards, but they could also look at the transitional kindergarten implementation guide for guidance.
Ah, there we go. I knew there was another guide. So thank you, Mary Autry. Yeah, and if that didn't help answer your question, let's get back and we're happy to talk more about that. All right, let's go ahead and move on. At this point, we're going to turn it over to Evaluation Systems to talk to us a little bit about what we've been learning in this administration so far that began last August and has brought us up to today, April 28th.
Thanks, Amy. It's Tina. I'm going to take this one. So as of the beginning of the 2019-2020 program year, we have received more than 10,000 submissions across cycles 1 and 2. Those submissions that have been scored and reported out as of this Thursday, April 30th, are included in the chart for cycle 1 and cycle 2, both for multiple subject and then for single subject. So you can see we're supporting over 6,000 candidates have attempted at least one of the cycles, starting with cycle 1. Also, if you look at the difference between the number of candidates, for example, that have completed cycle 1 versus those that have completed cycle 2, we're close to 1,000 candidates that are still have not completed both cycles, 950 to be exact. For cycle 2, you'll again see that there's quite a bit of difference between the number of candidates in single subject that haven't completed cycle 1 and cycle 2. As you'll see towards the bottom, given those candidates that have either not passed one of the cycles, have not completed and passed both of the cycles, or have just registered for a cycle or cycles, we have over 5,580, well, 5,500 candidates, 5,587 to be exact, that have not completed the CalTPA requirement and will need program support, whether that's support in how to complete the CalTPA in a synchronous learning environment prior to their end of their program and pass the cycles, or program support in recommending them for the program sponsored variable term waiver. Next slide, please. So what we have here is our remaining 2019-2020 submission deadlines and reporting dates. So the next reporting or submission deadline on your right-hand column comes up on May 7th. Any candidate that submits by midnight on May 7th will receive their results on May 28th. Following down after that, a couple weeks later on the 21st of May, on June 4th, and on June 18th. Published this year, that was the final submission deadline for the 2019-2020 program year. To support candidates that needed additional time to complete their CalTPA, a new deadline and reporting date was added. That is June 2nd, 2020 for reporting on July 23rd. And the 2020-2021 submission schedule will be released soon. And there will be a submission deadline in August. Now, once we start the 2020-2021 program year, we do migrate to year 3 materials. But I believe it was as James, you mentioned that the changes and modifications were really for clarity. So we're not going to see significant changes such that if a candidate started on the 1920 materials, it would take a lot of work for them to migrate over to the 2020-21 materials. I see there was a suggestion in the chat to change the color or background color for the new templates. I'm not sure how far we are in that production of those templates, but a nice suggestion. But I do want to mention that no candidate would be penalized for using prior year templates in the next program year. So if they use the 1920 template submitted, say in September of 2020 and did not use the new templates, they will still be scored as long as they provided the appropriate evidence. Next slide, please. Just a little more information about scoring. Amy indicated early on in our session today that we are spending a lot of time reviewing each and every submission that contains any evidence of online instruction in a virtual setting. And our working commission staff is working with expert consultants, our pool of lead assessors, experts within their own respective content area, to develop guidance for scoring online settings. All of the submissions received to date have been put in a pool to be consensus scored. Well, what does that mean? That means each submission is reviewed by at least 2 lead assessors, and those lead assessors then compare their scores and reach consensus on a final score for each and every rubric. Any submissions that don't meet the passing standard that are within an online setting due to a feature or technical issue or something associated with the online setting are escalated and reviewed by others as well as the commission staff. Our lead assessors are developing assessor training curriculum to provide clear training to the assessors, and then assessors will participate in an online training and calibrate on an online setting submission before scoring these submissions. The goal is that no candidate should receive different scoring. We're looking for consistency, accuracy within the scoring. And at this point, we're still committed to providing scores within 3 weeks of every submission deadline. And that is how we're moving forward. Thanks, James.
Tina, I just want to add one other point so that everyone is aware. If you go back to the slide ahead here, this last point about preparing assessors, this won't happen until we are satisfied that we have seen enough entries and submissions to truly understand all of the different ways that candidates are finding to work in synchronous settings and submit evidence. So rest assured that we are following the consensus model for a while, until such time that we feel comfortable that we have really developed a very thorough assessor calibration process. At that time, I'm anticipating this would be months in the future from now, that we would then pull in our currently calibrated assessors and recalibrate them based on what we're learning from the study we're conducting at looking at all currently submitted work. So we just want to assure you that we are taking every step we can to ensure that candidates are scored equitably and consistently as they move from an in-person setting to an online setting, or they submit some online instruction and then switch to an online setting. We're seeing all kinds of submissions come in, and many are being done with very high quality. So we are feeling comfortable there. The candidates have been able to move to that synchronous online setting and submit evidence that can be scored. So once we do really see enough of these and really feel comfortable, then we will move on and pull in some of our assessors and move back to an assessor training process that doesn't require that consensus scoring. All right, let's keep going. Still lots more to share. So we have 4 options for candidates currently for programs to work with candidates to consider what is the best support that that individual candidate needs as they move through this challenging time and on into employment and induction or stays with you. So let's start with the top. At this time, there are 4 options. Again, remember the commission is on a daily basis in conversation with the administration in California, with the governor's office, around what options we can pursue. Early on in this presentation, we explained what modifications the commission itself could make and which modifications would have to be dealt with through an executive order. So I do want you to know that options are still being discussed, and we need to all stay tuned for options coming along that may be added to these four. So the first one that we have right now is that candidates complete their cycles and submit them using evidence that they had collected prior to COVID-19. And they complete their reflective writing, et cetera, and submit. The second option is that candidates move to an online setting for instruction, and it has to be synchronous. We need to see the candidates and the students. They complete their cycles in the synchronous online setting and they submit. The third option is that you, the program, in consultation with your candidate, apply for the PS-VTW, that program-sponsored variable term waiver. And the candidate then takes that waiver, they find a job, and then they work in their induction program to get support, additional support in addition to the support the program is giving them to complete in the next academic year while they're in that induction program. So the induction program begins, but their first work in the induction program would focus on helping them finish their preliminary requirements, be that a performance assessment or RECA or whatever it might be, additional clinical hours. Option 4, the candidate really is just not ready to be the teacher of record, and so they stay affiliated with you in your program, they stay enrolled, and they complete under your support the performance assessment and other requirements that they need, so that then they would, at that point, once all those requirements had been met, you would then apply for their preliminary credential. So currently, these are the 4 options. And again, we highly employ you to sit down literally in a meeting with every candidate and determine what is the best option to support their professional development, and then take action on that. And remember, the PS-VTW forms will not be available until June 1st, because really candidates need to complete this quarter or this semester so that you know what kind of supports they need and what should go on that individual development plan, and whether or not they need to be on a PS-VTW. Next slide, please. So just some general requirements and considerations. Do remember that all assessment requirements must be met for the CalTPA regardless of the instructional setting. So the assessment guides as written are standing, as are the rubrics. Candidates and students must be visible in video clips. Unloaded video clips must be continuous. Uploaded video clips must be continuous and unedited, with the following exceptions. We do ask candidates specifically in the assessment guide to redact or take away the names of students to protect their privacy. So covering or removing student names to protect privacy is not considered a video edit. And if you have a platform that you're using that allows for closed captioning, that can be turned on to enhance audio intelligibility. Instruction must continue to be based on the California Content Standards annual frameworks and use content-specific pedagogy. Next slide. Candidates must be able to see and synchronously instruct and interact with students in real time. Candidates must teach actual students from their assigned class. Candidates' own children or neighborhood children may not be used to create a mock classroom, nor can they create a mock classroom with their teacher preparation candidates or their parents or their friends. It must be actual students from an assigned class. And candidates should adhere to all school or district guidelines for recording in online settings and continue to ensure that appropriate permissions are in place to protect the privacy and safety of children. James, let's talk specifically now about Cycle 1 of the CalTPA.
Thank you, Amy. So Cycle 1 requirements and considerations that are to be followed. Synchronous instruction is required. A minimum of 3 students is required. If only 3 students are engaged in the lesson, the 3 students must represent the required 3 focus students. The Getting to Know Your Students template should indicate and briefly describe the online setting. The lesson plan and the lesson plan rationale template should address specific instruction strategies and/or adaptations applied due to the online setting.
So moving over to cycle 2, looking at their requirements and considerations. The learning segment must include both, may include both synchronous and asynchronous instructions. However, the video clips for steps 2 and 4 must come from synchronous segments that include teacher and student interaction. So once again, a minimum of 3 students is required. If only 3 students are engaged, their responses must represent the range of responses across the class. The contextual information template should indicate and briefly describe the online setting. And the learning segment template should address specific instructional strategies and/or adaptations applied due to the online setting. Additionally,
thank you, Wayne.
Candidates must continue to provide blank copies of the informal student self-assessment, formal assessments, and corresponding rubrics, including definition of proficient student performance. Candidates must continue to collect and submit 3 formal assessment responses with feedback. When selecting assessment strategies, candidates should take into consideration how they will deliver, collect, analyze, and provide feedback through the virtual instruction platform like Zoom, or they can use other virtual means like email or Dropbox. Those are support, those are asynchronous and as in support to the video segments. So TK students using a virtual instructional platform like Zoom to engage in content-specific learning meets the requirement for students to engage and demonstrate the use of educational technology. We've been doing a series of online seminars and webinars with folks from Q, John Carippo, Steve McGriff have done a whole series of webinars on how teacher candidates can continue to use educational technology in an online setting, but just to meet the requirement, if all they do is use the online setting, that will meet the educational technology requirement for cycle 2.
All right, so at this point, we're going to turn it over to Laura Kasab, who is our content expert on online learning, who has really helped us out a lot in the last multiple weeks. So Laura, you want to take us through the next several slides?
Sure. So these are just some technology tips for candidates. And just so everyone listening knows, I'm also creating a few online videos that I'm posting on a YouTube channel, and I'll send the link to the CTC to link to on their YouTube channel. But basically, candidates can watch these videos to learn how to do some of these things. Like, you should always test the technology before recording and practice the recording before they do their actual instruction for submission. There have been minor technical difficulties, but a lot of those technical difficulties occurred because candidates aren't necessarily testing the equipment and the tools with students before trying them out. So very strongly recommend and take this back to your programs that students should test the technology with students on their own and then with students before they use it. Virtual instruction platforms such as Zoom, this is the video I'm working on right now, must support the ability to record candidate instruction and student engagement for the purpose of generating required video evidence, and/or external cameras may be used. There will be some guidance on this as far as how to do that in a way that's effective coming. And gallery view is strongly recommended if you are using a conferencing platform such as Zoom or WebEx. You need to be able to see the candidate and the students, so there will be guidance coming on those. Can I have the next slide? If using an external camera, you want to make sure, and that external camera means that the candidate is facing the computer, and then there's a camera that they have recording themselves on the facing the computer. They want to ensure that there's no glare on the screen that would prohibit viewing the video. Again, regardless of where that camera is or which camera they're using, both the candidate and the student or students need to be seen. Be sure that they are clear images and audio of both the candidate and the students. Candidates should identify themselves so it's clear. A lot of our candidates, and this is aging me here, look a lot like their students, especially those going for secondary credentials. So the candidates need to, at some point, identify themselves so it's very clear which one is the teacher in the classroom and who the students are. And then there is going to be a resource page of online tools and tutorial links posted to the ctcexams.nesinc.com page. Next slide. And this is an example of an external camera.
James, if you could hit click again, just to draw our attention to a different point in the screen.
Yeah.
Lauren, go ahead.
Great, so this is an external camera. So you can see the candidate here on the right-hand side, and the little red arrow is pointing to where we can see the students that this person is working with. Next slide.
A similar
here's
example.
Yeah, here's another example. And this one, I would actually, for this particular image, if your candidates are using an external camera, please also ask them to do landscape. When they do it this way, this is called portrait, and it gets really small, and it was really, really, really hard to see which one of these tiny little boxes was the teacher talking. So in this one, you can actually, one of those boxes there is the teacher as well as the students, and they're looking at a shared screen, a shared document on their screen. There, questions?
Yeah, so questions. Jay, do you want to walk us through some questions? And then we have just a few more slides to share about additional resources, and we will be at our closing time of 4:30.
Okay, hold on. Before that, let me clarify. The arrow was not in the original video. The arrow was there for us to be able to point to where the image of the teacher was. So that was not in the original video. That was just us posting that to show you where the teacher was.
Okay,
Thank you, Laura, for clarifying.
The two biggies that have been a thread throughout, they would like a little bit more definition on what does it mean to be affiliated with the educator prep program. And secondly, if Wayne would reiterate what he said the other day about 1 student versus 3 students and where it's located in which part of the cycling, those of the cycle guides, those are the 2 things that were most prevalent in all the questions.
Great. Thank you, Gabe, for doing that summary. So let's take the first question. Why do we use the word affiliated? We use the word affiliated because we don't, in regulation, have the word enrolled particularly. To every program out there, and remember, there are many of you in California who are running teacher preparation programs. You all begin your programs and conclude your programs at different times. You enroll candidates sometimes every month of the year. And you also have ways that you stay engaged, affiliated with your candidates because you are the program that recommends them for the preliminary credential. So in the past, you had situations where candidates may not have passed the teaching performance assessment, may not have finished coursework, may not have finished their student teaching, or may needed to repeat something because they needed more support. And you had a way that you described in your catalog or your program documents that let a candidate know how you as a program, how you would support them in order to help them and assist them pass a teaching performance assessment. Sometimes you enroll them in a 1-unit course. Sometimes you work to create an online tutorial. Sometimes you actually have them re-enroll in your program and pay tuition. Sometimes if you're an intern program, you just keep working with that candidate until such time that they pass their TPA. That's what I did with my interns when I was running my intern program. I was able to do that. We at the commission did not want to describe what exactly the word enrollment had to mean, because it means so many different things to so many of you. We did not want to tie your hands or candidates' hands in any way. So we say affiliated, and what that means is that you as a program have some kind of formal agreement with a candidate about how you will provide support to them as they engage in the TPA, or as they redo their TPA to submit, or as they work to finish up their requirements. Remember, as a teacher preparation program, you are responsible for applying for that candidate's preliminary credential. So you need to know where they are, and you need to be affiliated. And we highly recommend that it's some kind of formal document. It could be an MOU, it could be a letter, it could be a course that you require. It's up to you, but you need to know where the candidate is. The candidate needs to know what to expect from you. And we always recommend that those kinds of things be put into some kind of formal document, but it's your choice about how you want to do that. Candidates may not take the TPA on their own. They have to have support and be part of a program, a teacher preparation program. So when they register, they tell us what teacher preparation program they're attending, for example. So that's what that word means. And I hope that helps you understand why we use the word affiliated, because it doesn't actually have to be a course. It could be a whole range of supports that you are willing to offer. But some type of instructor or faculty person needs to be supporting the candidate and available to the candidate. And typically, those people that are faculty or support providers like to be paid for their time. And that's why sometimes there has to be a fee. But in other situations, that's not the case. So again, it's open, it's up to the program, but it needs to be some type of formal affiliation so the candidate knows what kinds of support you're going to continue to offer them until such time that they finish their preliminary requirements and you, the program, recommend them for a preliminary credential. Okay, so Gay, tell us the second question again.
We're wondering about the 1 student versus 3 students that they've heard both, and Wayne the other day had them listed out and wondered if he could reiterate that in following the assessment guide for the cycle and what is written for each of those different steps.
Okay, well, I'll start off and then Wayne, you can back me up. But if you read the assessment guide for cycle 1 and you read the definition for the video clip, you can see it's very clear. In cycle 1, we have to have 3 focus students that are engaged in the lesson that is taught. So that is why the minimum number is 3. We do not define the number that makes up a class anywhere in any guide, but we do have to have 3 focus students, and that's how we got to the number 3 in cycle 1. Focus students don't have to be in the video clips, but if that's all you're working with, then of course they would have to be in the video clips. When you get to assessment cycle 2, there are 4 video clips. Again, read the video clip description. It clearly states how many students with an S. We don't say the number per se, but if it has an S on it, that means more than 1. Or it says at least 1, in which case we mean at least 1. So Wayne, you want to follow up? Oh yeah, in cycle 2, you got to have 3 pieces of student work. So 3 students at a minimum have to engage in the cycle 2 experience for the learning segment. Okay, Wayne.
No, that's exactly correct. You, with that last comment, you covered all the points. But when we say 3, we don't necessarily mean that if there's only 1 or 2 students in the video that's not going to get a passing score, it's going to get a condition code. It just, you know, as Amy indicated, there needs to be at least 3 students to address the specific concerns for cycle 1 and for cycle 2.
Right, so for example, in the multiple subject version of the performance assessment guide on page 13, the definitions of the 3 clips are provided for you. In cycle 2, the definition of those 4 clips are provided for you and candidates on pages 14 and 15. One of the most repeated pieces of advice we have given to candidates and to programs over the last 5 years is what, Wayne?
Gee, there's a long list. What is it?
Read the assessment guide. Read the assessment guide. I'll say it one more time. Read the assessment guide, because that is what is still going to be held for these submissions. So all the information you need is in the assessment guide. And if you're thinking about quality of performance, then we highly recommend that you return to and again read the rubrics. And we always encourage programs to use the rubrics in courses with candidates. And you always read the essential question to know what the rubric is focused on measuring. And you always start at level 3 to look at what the expected performance level is. So, you know, when people say, well, you know, what do you require? Well, we require the performance that's described in level 3 is kind of the middle of that rubric. But as you know, our passing standards allow for 2s and 3s and 4s and 5s. 5s are rare, 1s are rare. You can't get more than 2 1s on any of the rubrics and still pass. So all of that advice is still in place. The assessment guides describe exactly what needs to be done, and the rubrics provide descriptions of practice. So at this time, even though we're moving our learning settings from in-person to online, synchronous in experiences with learning, all the assessment guide directions hold, as do the rubrics.
And one additional question that has caught my eye is talking about what happens if the student names happen to appear in the video. Well, for you guys that have been with me since all the way back in 2007, this has not changed at all. We've always talked about, to protect the privacy of the students, to please redact their names. And most of the time we see that, and a lot of times we don't. We've never let that affect the score. So once again, primary concern is to protect the privacy of students. But if you do not have the ability to redact their names or blur them out, we've instructed our assessors just to ignore that and score the submission based on the evidence presented.
So I know that there are still questions in the chat around the number of students, and we are happy to talk with anybody individually about this, but really the answer is in the assessment guides. So let's keep going. We have event updates we want to share with you, because there's a lot more support coming your way as we move through the spring. So we want to start with April. Here we are in April, almost finished with April, but we were going to offer our 5th regional faculty workshop, and we have rescheduled that to be later in the summer at this point, and we will most likely be offering it online unless things change quickly with our public health officials. And so watch the PSD e-news for updates on this. Next slide, please. So we have the coordinators meeting and implementation conference. The coordinators meeting that we had set for an in-person full-day meeting in the spring on Thursday, May 28th, will still be held, but we will hold it with you online. And certainly by May 28th, we'll have more information to share with you. If we have more information or specificity or details to share with you between now and May 28th, we'll hold another webinar with you like we held today to be able to share information with you as quickly as we understand it ourselves. And then our Meredith Fellows Implementation Conference has been postponed in person, but we just decided today that we will offer this implementation conference this summer online. So watch for details about how we are going to navigate that and offer that to you. And again, you'll find information in the PSD news update each Friday that comes out from PSD. And then one more slide here, virtual think tanks are still going on. We just had a great one last Friday, thanks to our experts who joined us for that, Karen Escalante and Daniel Sujinda, and others who have joined us on the last Friday of every month now for a couple of years. We are posting our virtual think tanks on the Commission's YouTube channel, so if you missed it, you can go there and see it. The last couple anyway, and we will be posting them there moving into the future. Our next virtual think tank is going to be held May 29th moving beyond the quiz to performance-based assessments, process, product, or performance. So that may be helpful to those of you supporting candidates with cycle 2. And then we will be releasing additional topics. So if you have ideas of what you would like additional support on, let us know and we will try and schedule that for you. Wayne, back to you.
Okay, as you all know, we have our virtual office hours for CalTPA every Thursday at 10 o'clock. A lot of you come by and ask questions on that, and we will continue to host that through the next piece of time. So if you do have questions that do not get answered today, please join us for the virtual office hours and we'll come alongside and try to be helpful. We also asked some additional COVID-19 resources that have been provided by the Learning Policy Institute, and we provide a link for that. So if you are interested in those kinds of resources, we are making those available to you. James?
Yes, I am going to just provide some very general updates with the CalTPA Education Specialist design team. Our next slide shows our timeline. We are currently meeting with the design team. Just as a reminder, the design team was identified and commissioned by the executive director in December of 2019. We had our first meeting in February, and we are continuing our meetings now. We have gone to an online format utilizing Zoom, which has worked very well. So it keeps us on our timeline and it allows us to continue moving forward with working with the 24 members of our design team along with our liaisons from the California Department of Education to continue to look at what the TPA will look like, or the CalTPA, excuse me, will look like for education specialist candidates. And as you can see, our goal is to complete a pilot test around December of 2020 into March of 2021, a field test the next year, December 21 to March of 22, our standard setting study in May of 2022, and then looking at our first year of operational administration in the 2022-2023 year. So we wanted to share with you, let you know we are still continuing with our work. And this slide here shows the members of our design team. We have design team members who represent all 5 credential areas of emphasis, the mild, moderate, extensive support, early childhood, deaf and hard of hearing, and visual impairments. And on this Zoom meeting right now, we have one of our design team members, Jennifer Critch from Point Loma University. She is with us on this call today, and very excited to be working with these great educators as we build and look to a CalTPA that will serve the needs of education specialist candidates.
Amy, for this final question and answer, I wanted to start with the fact that first Daniel and then Terry Clark noted that the PSA regarding the 3A and 4A agenda items from last week have been released, so you can go onto our website to find that as well. And then for a new concern, because there's still a lot going on about the students, if you want to go revisit that for a while. But Monique said originally, and then several echoed her concern. I'm concerned that candidates may not get jobs as easily with the PS-VTW. Is there anything that the CTC is doing with connection with the districts, at the very least, about messaging about the variable term waivers? In order for this to work, the in-school job becomes the mechanism. Not all candidates are in the financial situation to be replaced in a practicum rather than take a job.
Yeah, so I put a response to that in the chat. but I'm happy to say it again. So the commission is working with stakeholders, with the Department of Education, with the State Board of Education, with the governor's office, with other affiliation groups out there, including AXA and PASCO. And if you have any other additional ideas about who we should be talking to or who we should be sharing this information with, please let us know. But it is going to be a concerted and collaborative effort for all of us to help employers understand what the PS-VTW means, that these are candidates who are in good standing, that they have completed their work to the best of their ability, but because of COVID-19, they couldn't complete all of their work, but they are ready to be teachers of record. And that's what this PS-VTW document certifies, so that when they come in, they are ready to teach. They may need some support in different ways from their induction program, but US programs have certified that they are ready to teach. So we also recommend that as programs you reach out to your districts that you're working with, that you typically are placing teachers in for employment, and let them know, bring them into the conversation. It's going to take all of us working together to get the message out. And of course, the commission will do what it has done. We can write a letter, we can have the superintendent sign it with our executive director. We can do things like that, but we know how really the best action is for a personal conversation with someone. So if you know your employing agencies that typically recruit your teachers, have a conversation with them and explain what's going on and explain the flexibility that the commission has put forward and what the PS-VTW means. And I think that will go a long way. And we, of course, will continue to do what we can do on our end, but we're all going to have to work on that together.
Amy, may I add something to what you just said? Because I did see it in the chat, and it was with regard to service credit. Just a reminder, employers, what contracts they place teachers on is the determination for service credit. However, we do have information from STRS, you can find it on their website, that if a teacher is employed, regardless of what the variable term waiver, they will receive service credit through STRS. But again, it is all in the way that the employer classifies the employee on the contract. And so with regard to that, that's something that a candidate will have to explore, just like they would with any type of position that they take in a school district, whether that position is temporary, it's probationary. So that really is something that candidates should be doing already when they are going on their interviews. So I just wanted to add that they will receive their service credit in STRS if they are on contract and they are receiving compensation by the district.
Great, thank you, James. Are there other questions, Gay? We do realize, by the way, everyone, that we are past our 4:30 end date, but we're happy to stay online with you and entertain some more questions before we need to wrap up. So Gay, back to you. Are there a couple more questions we can manage?
I have a couple of small ones that are real quick, and then I have a couple of big ones.
Okay,
so,
great.
Tamara said, I've been getting a lot of questions about whether the informal assessment in the Cycle 2 video has to be the same one featured in Step 1. I have read the guidelines carefully and they don't specify this, so I have been telling them it's fine if they are different. I just want to confirm.
Who else? Can you, that's a long question, so I was trying to find it in the chat. Can you just read it one more time, Gay?
Sure. I've been getting a lot of questions about whether the informal assessment in the Cycle 2 video has to be the same one featured in Step 1. I have read the guidelines carefully and they don't specify.
No, it doesn't have to be.
So she's good to go. Second quickie, is there going to be a fee for the variable term waiver program sponsored?
Yes, there is a fee. I believe the fee is $100. I think I saw that in an earlier document that I needed to read through and edit this morning. And if Terry Clark's on the line, she can confirm. But there is a fee for a waiver. The commission, however, is also pursuing in its conversations and ongoing conversations with the administration, ways to perhaps offset that fee. So stay tuned. We realize that it's a burden, and we're trying to see if there is an option for us to help mitigate costs, just like we want to try and mitigate and be flexible with some of our standards-driven expectations for teacher preparation.
And then 2 observations/questions. The first one is, it would be great if guidelines for the online instruction could be formalized and added to the 2020-21 assessment guides.
Yes, we have thought about that. You know, if anybody has a crystal ball, maybe you could tell me when we're going to all be back to normal, but we certainly don't know on our side. And from what we can tell, we may be moving into and maintaining online learning for a while, until such time that it is safe to have students in classrooms, and we have all begun to understand how to social distance and how to keep our learning spaces clean, etc. So in understanding that this may be a while before we're back to pre-COVID-19 days, we are going to have online learning. And so we will continue to prepare and provide direction around online learning settings and strategies for how to do that well, so that we can clearly see the teacher, clearly see the students, clearly hear the discussion, clearly understand that content is being taught, etc. So we have been offering online learning seminars for the last many weeks. They are all provided for you on the Commission's YouTube website channel, and we will continue to provide supports around online learning, and we will continue to provide additional recommendations for online settings in many places. So certainly on the Commission's website, but also on the ctcexams.net Inc. website, and we will continue to provide support to candidates as we go forward.
And then the second observation/question, is it on the radar to reconsider the requirements for teacher candidates who are working in a bilingual classroom/dual immersion program? There have been some known challenges for these students in regards to the current guidelines that have been put out.
So that conversation is ongoing. We were about to have another conversation to relook at the policy set by the Commission last February, and we got sidelined because of COVID-19. So we will work as a staff to get that conversation back online. We have to follow the policy that was set by the Commission until such time we bring forward another item to the Commission and ask them to reconsider the decisions that they made last spring. So we watch for this. We'll reach out to those of you who are looking for some more support around the bilingual policy that was set, and we will set up that call and continue to try and make sure that the policy direction is clear, so that you as programs and your candidates can feel comfortable with what the expectation is.
And then a big question from Monique. For candidates who have not yet registered for the CalTPA and they're hoping to complete the CalTPA using a PS-VTW in the fall, would you suggest having these candidates wait till just before the fall to register, or maybe wait till the new wave of material comes out? Or do you think they should register soon?
So register for the CalTPA cycles. Is that?
Okay, I thought I answered that one in the chat, but this is Tina. I'm happy to answer it again. No problem. If the candidate is intending to begin work now and throughout the summer, but submit in the fall, then yes, they should register. However, if the candidate is not intending to begin any work at all until the fall on the templates and utilizing the materials, they should wait. That way they only have the most recent material as of the fall and don't have to worry about any transition between current materials and the slight modifications made to the new year program materials. Please let us know if that doesn't answer your question.
And then I had 2 more come in while we were talking. Marianne wants to clarify the $100 fee is per student to get onto a PS-VTW. What is the timeline for knowing if there may be some relief here from some of the ways that you mentioned?
So the VTW, I believe I saw this morning that it was $100 fee, but that needs to be
That's what I've seen.
confirmed. So don't quote me, but I believe that's what I saw. All of our documents have a fee because we have to pay people to process them, as you know. So while it is difficult to have to charge candidates when we know it's expensive to gain a license in the state and maintain it, it is what we have to do. And so what the commission is doing, however, is seeking some type of financial support. And again, we just don't know what's going to happen. We're trying. I can tell you that to do everything we can to be flexible to candidates within the purview of what the commission has the right to be making modifications about. There are quite a number of things that have to happen. Thank you, Sarah Solari, for confirming that need to come to us through an executive order. And so we are hopeful. We also have to let you know that right now, the state of California, as probably every state in the United States, is heading towards a very difficult fiscal climate. And there is not going to be extra money or extra anything, but we are hopeful that we can do something. So stay tuned. I don't know when we'll know. We're hoping to know within the next several weeks. We are one of many agencies who have submitted executive orders for consideration, and we are in line. So we're hoping to hear soon. I can't tell you when, but just know that we are working on it, and we're trying to do all we can to support candidates.
And then our last question from Susie. Can districts hire a teacher on a VTW if they have an equally qualified candidate who has a preliminary credential?
It is a local control decision, and every single local school district and county office have their approach and way that they hire candidates. And I don't know if anyone else wants to jump in here, but
no, that's absolutely correct.
That's what I thought. All right. So
and yeah, and Amy, if I'm understanding correctly, candidates who are hired under the PS-VTW, that, if I understand correctly from the commission meeting, that would not be considered as counting against a district in terms of reporting, like a variable term waiver might be for other areas such as not passing the CBEST or other exams or other types of program requirements. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, that point was definitely discussed. And again, we would probably want to double check the outcome of the commission meeting, but if you go to the commission meeting minutes, it will clarify that. It was definitely brought up and discussed that we would not want to penalize our programs or our school districts if they hired PS-VTW candidates.
And then if you really, really want one last question, Allison asked a long time ago, do you have mid-level examples of online teaching to share for the cycles?
Yes, we do, and they are posted on the commission's website as we speak. Wayne, do you want to talk to this?
Well, we have a couple examples posted, but they're not examples of online teaching. Those examples were posted before the whole online teaching and COVID-19 conversation came into play. So, as Amy had talked about earlier, we are looking at submissions that do have online video components to those, and we will try to give you more guidance as we move forward and examples on how to best move forward and support your candidates as they're continuing to teach in an online setting.
Yeah. So we have had people ask us about this, and like I said, we are doing a study now of looking at what is coming in, because we like to build our advice directly from submissions and not make things up. So as we are studying these submissions, and they're growing number, Tina, you're still on the line with us. I think we have, 30 and upwards now that have come in that are in online settings for cycle 2 and quite a number in cycle 1. So we have a lot to look at and we are carefully looking at it and we're building guidance from there. That's why we brought Laura Kasab on with us. We are going to be releasing more detailed guidance around things candidates should be thinking about as they prepare to work online and then also do their CalTPA in that synchronous online setting. So we will continue to offer supports. If you have ideas about what you need, and clearly one idea that you would like is to see some responses from candidates that they have submitted. So we will try and work towards that end so that you can see what some of this is looking like. We highly recommend, as we always have, that as faculty and instructors working with your CalTPA candidates, that you read their responses and that you watch their videos. And I think I would also offer to you that as your candidates move through these online settings and prepare their submissions, that you will have the opportunity to ask candidates to use what their work is looking like to share with other candidates who might need that level of support. A picture is worth 1,000 words. So if a candidate can see what someone did, that might really help them bridge the gap. So not only will we look for examples, but I highly encourage you to be reading your candidate submissions and watching their videos and then asking for permission to use those videos in a library kind of format so that your candidates can see firsthand a range of examples of how candidates are interacting with this online setting.
And Amy, this is Tina. Just one circle back to a topic that came up multiple times that there seemed to be a lot of confusion about, and that was the minimum number of students that needed to appear in each of the video clips. Based on prior webinars, some of our coordinators, it sounds like, have gone out to the field and shared with their teacher candidates what they understood previously. And what I just wanted to say is that any submission that comes in from now until, or previously, or until we have clear and explicit guidance posted for candidates, all of the submissions will be scored and they will not receive a condition code. I just wanted to alleviate some angst I felt in the chat regarding that.
So as we had said before, the biggest criteria right now is that the teacher candidate and some number of students need to be seen in the videos. The ones that will be getting condition codes are the ones that are coming in, there's only audio and there's no video. There's a written transcript or those kinds of things. Right now, as of today, there needs to be a video component for both cycles, and we need to see, as we've talked about multiple times throughout this session, the teacher candidate and the students need to be seen in the video.
Right. What we're trying to point out is that you can't sort of patchwork together responses to the different steps of an individual cycle. So as you all know, cycle 1, you must tell us about 3 different focus students that you are working with. You can't imagine and make up focus students. So that's why we're saying a minimum of 3 must be provided so that we can see who the 3 focus students are. Now, as you look at the descriptions for each of the video clips, that's where there is some either openness or lack of us establishing exactly what a class has to be made up of. And that allows for some flexibility. But we have to follow the assessment guide as written in order for us to score these submissions, because these candidates, even though it's a very challenging time, need to be treated in a similar manner as candidates who submitted before. So that's why we keep encouraging you to carefully read the assessment guide. And if you do have additional follow-up questions, you can ask us about that. We never said that the focus students had to be in the video clips for reasons of privacy. And we didn't want to be calling out the focus students in a video recording that might make them feel uncomfortable in some way. So we never said that they had to be in the video clips, but you do have to have 3 focus students that you're working with in order to complete cycle 1. So that's what we were trying to point out. And in cycle 2, you do have to have 3 pieces of student work: a student that exceeded the goal, a student that met the goal, a student that has yet to meet the goal. And each of the 4 descriptions of those 4 video clips in cycle 2, some allow for flexibility around number of students, and some are more explicit, where it might say at least 1 student, for example. So again, if you always take yourself and your candidates back to the guide, that's where you're going to get the best information to your answer your questions. And if you still have questions, of course, at any time you can send us an email and we will walk through it with you. So we apologize if there's been confusion, but as we keep saying and have always said, we are not changing the expectations of the assessment guides. We are not revising the rubrics. So we hope that that message is very clear. And again, if you have additional questions, we're always happy to talk through them. Call us on office hours or just email us directly. Was there anything else in the chat, or shall we bid a fond farewell to everyone until the next time we're together? We're at 2 minutes in front of 5.
I think we're out of questions. I just put in a reminder that they may wish to attend the webinar by the PSD personnel that is happening on Monday, May 4th. You mentioned it earlier.
Yes, absolutely. We really want, those dates have been posted in the last PSD e-news, and they will be very important because they will be webinars that extend beyond just CalTPA and assessment considerations. So we highly recommend that you watch those. And Gay, what's the date again?
Monday, May 4th. May the 4th be with you.
May the 4th be with you, Gay. And at what time?
I don't know. You'd have to look at the email link real quick.
Okay. Gay's going to find us the time. We don't want you to miss it. But do know that we will archive those webinars as well. So we invite you to, there will be 4, actually. The first one is this Friday for administrators. Then there's 3 more following up next week. So really do stay tuned, as a lot of information and guidance is being produced by the PSD staff and our performance assessment staff. And we really hope to help everyone get through this challenging time as well as they can, and move on into employment and become successful teachers like we know they can be. Oh, thank you, Sarah. You win.
10:30 to noon.
Oh,
Yeah, same.
You by 1 chat entry. So 10:30 to noon. 10:30 to noon on May 4th. May the 4th be with you. This will be a good webinar for you to attend as well. Otherwise, we'll talk to you in office hours or see you next webinar. So thank you everyone so much for joining us. Thank you Evaluation Systems for your expertise, and Laura Kassab, thank you so much for helping us think through online settings. Have a great evening everyone, and stay healthy out there.